My name is Bartholomew. When a man named Jesus said, drop what you're doing and come follow me, I did. And so did 11 other men. We were all very different from each other. Some had education, others had calluses. Some were excited to join us, and others resisted at first. Many were welcomed, and a few kept quietly to themselves. But Jesus wanted 12 men to follow him, to teach, mold, and love, and I was one of them. Over the next 3 years, we traveled the countryside with him. He had a magnetic charisma and an incredible knowledge of the scriptures, but he didn't stop there. He performed miracles and preached a radical kind of love, a sacrificial love that puts others first, a love that doesn't recognize cultural boundaries or even fair play. A love like that didn't make sense to many of us, but it was the love he practiced, and we were drawn to him like everyone else. Many began to think that he might be the Messiah that we had been promised, the one that would free Israel from Roman oppression and restore the righteous throne of David. And the 12 of us, his closest friends, were poised to take our places at his side. All of Israel shivered in anticipation. Our Messiah had come! Everyone, that is, except for some of the high priests. They disapproved of his unorthodox ways, abhorred his inappropriate associations, and resented his disrespectful and uncooperative attitudes toward them. They plotted his removal. The Holy Week of Passover was the beginning of the end. The priests had him arrested. When he called himself the Son of God and the King of the Jews, the priests called for his execution as a blasphemer. When he failed to seize power and overthrow Roman rule, the people felt betrayed. And on Friday afternoon, he was crucified like a common criminal. It is now Saturday night. Jesus is in a tomb. The streets are quiet. Reactions are mixed. Jesus knew he would always be the object of controversy, and the people who shared his last few days found themselves on one side or the other. But both sides have one thing in common: very strong emotions. Witness now a passion for the Christ.
Not the villain here. Quite the contrary. I anxiously await the coming of the Messiah, like every other God-fearing, obedient Jew. I can tell you truthfully, that radical upstart was not the Messiah. The true Messiah would work with us, not against us. Unlike this impostor who seemed to go out of his way to degrade, embarrass, and insult us every chance he got. We would test him, and he would play games and twist our words, making us look like fools in the eyes of people foolish enough to listen to him. He even went so far as to destroy the Passover market in the courtyard. No true Messiah would ever do that. That's when I knew. That's when I was assured of the truth. Of course he was charismatic and knowledgeable, like all false messiahs. But he perverted the Holy Scripture, and I'm convinced that his power was not from God. And that means if he had any power at all, he was probably in league with Satan himself. He had to be stopped. I have seen others who claim to be God's chosen one, and most even gained a certain amount of popularity, like this one did. But instead of supporting us like many of the others, he flaunted his associations with the likes of tax collectors, Gentiles, prostitutes, and beggars. He even healed on the Sabbath and boasted that he could forgive sins. What insolence! What insanity! But it was his deliberate disrespect and complete disregard for our traditions and positions of authority that assured me he was just another charlatan. And from Nazareth, of all places, when he had the audacity to blaspheme, that's when I realized how dangerous he was. He had to be silenced, quickly. It was better for one man to die than for an entire nation to be destroyed. I did what I had to do, and I did it with a clean conscience. My rightful position of authority is intact, and my place in history is assured.
But still, I resisted. When they pulled me out of my lover's house, I escaped and ran. I ran through the marketplace into the crowd and straight into a high priest. My guilt was witnessed and my sentence pronounced. My executioners gathered stones, and then silence. He was there, sitting quietly and not even watching the teacher, the Nazarene everyone was talking about. I had never heard him speak. I couldn't bring myself to. I was beyond help, beyond saving. There had been too many times, too many parties, too many lovers, and way too many thoughts. When challenged with the law, he answered, "Let the one without sin throw the first stone." Huddled on the ground, I held my breath and I braced myself for the pain and waited. And then I heard a thud. One by one, I heard stones dropping to the ground. And the day grew brighter and warmer with each one that fell. I wished that time would stop and I could stay in that moment forever. I was not dead. But inside, I felt dead. Must I go back to my life? Must I go back to myself? And then I heard a voice. "Where are they? Who stands to accuse you?" I opened my eyes and I looked around. I was surrounded by rocks. No one. Then neither do I. Go and sin no more. I felt the burden of my past lift away on the wings of mercy. Hope returned to my heart. saved me.
You know, I remember it like it was yesterday, the day that the angel came and told me that I was going to carry the Son of God within me. I didn't know how, I didn't know why me, but because he asked, I had to say, yes, Lord, I am your maidservant. What I didn't know then was how much I was going to grow to love him. My life is so entwined with his. He's so much a part of me, my son, and yet his son. I knew that he couldn't lead an ordinary life. How could he? But just to watch him grow up, the way he evolved, it was such a privilege to be his mother. You know, to see how he drew people to him, even from the beginning. He was like a magnet. He was so filled with joy. Just to hear him laugh, it was like music for my soul. Whenever anything wasn't going right, he just had this amazing way of instilling this calm over all things. Every single thing that he did with meaning and purpose. There was a reason for everything. You know, when I think about how intently he worked with Joseph, so precise. My son, the carpenter. Every time I think about when he made the table, I laughed at first because I didn't know what he was up to. He knew. He said that we were going to sit around it, that we were going to break bread, share our meals, share our day. It was so important to him that we gathered together. And boy, did we. What I would give to make another meal, knowing that he was going to come home, that we could sit around the table like we did. I just can't believe that he's gone, that he's not coming home. I can't believe that. The way people were starting to cling to him, they chased after him and his friends. It seemed that he was really loved, or that he threatened people somehow. You know, back when he was born, Simeon told me that he was destined to be a sign to cause the rise and fall of many, and to be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many were going to be revealed, and that a sword was going to pierce my own soul too. I never knew what he meant. I don't think I ever really wanted to know. But it all seems like it's coming together. Because I knew something bad was going to happen. When you can just sense it, you can feel it deep within you. Just something horrible is coming. Jesus, he was beside himself. I had never seen him like that. He went off with his friends to Gethsemane. And even John said that he had never seen him so sorrowful. They heard him talking to his father. Is there no other way? Take this cup from me. Not my will, but thy will be done. They arrested him. How could they arrest him? For what? He's never done anything wrong. But they said that he went willingly, as if somehow he knew. And then Pilate sentenced him to scourging. Do you know what that is? It is the most barbaric torture. I couldn't stay away because I knew what he was going to have to endure. The people, they were cheering. Only this time, the way they're cheering for his execution. I don't know how it got so out of hand so quickly. But I will never forget the sound that the whip made as it cracked across his bare back. It was ripping out of his flesh. To hear him cry out in agony each time. I had never seen anybody so badly beaten. This is my son. My mind cannot comprehend a love that is so great that it allowed him to be tortured. For who? For what? Why? My son was barely able to stand. And the crown of thorns, they put it on his head to mock him. Well, they pushed it down so hard that it pierced his brow. And the crowds, as they screamed, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" I just can't get that out of my head. We followed him up to Calvary's Hill as he carried the cross that they hung him on. They literally nailed him to the cross through his hands and his feet. I stayed at the foot of the cross because I couldn't leave him. I just needed to be with him. But I could hear him. I could hear him say, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." Forgive them, Lord. Forgive them. Forgive them. Forgive them, Lord. The soldiers, there was a whole group of them, and they started laughing. They're casting lots. They're gambling. They're gambling to see who's going to get his robe. His robe. They didn't care about him. I felt so numb and so helpless. finally he said it was finished. This lifeless body just hung there. And if that wasn't enough, one of the soldiers went over with his spear, and he stuck it in his side. And it was like it